Hi, so we're back here in Unity, and I just want to talk in this final lesson about making changes. So, what we've got so far is we've got some environment placeholders, these gray boxes that we brought in that we could walk along. We've got a character with some black and white graphics that we created in the beginning, and we spent most of our time working on the import pipeline, getting from Photoshop to an animation program to Unity. But in the process, we talked about things like Z order and layer sprites and stuff like that. And one thing that I really like about this 2D aspect of Unity is that it makes the changing of graphics and generally changing your mind a lot more flexible and easy than a typical 3D project. The the pipeline is very easy to work with. So what I want to do is just show a little bit of that. So we had deliberately created these placeholder graphics so that we could get our uh, colliders working and so on. And what we wanted to do was make sure that if we take this one, for example, up here, this slope here, that as long as it was the correct size for the game we were going to make, and it was the all the angles were measured at the correct angle for our point of view that we were going to work with, then we could leave this in our scene until we were ready to change it later. So if we look at it here, you can see that it's a prefab, right? So you can tell it's a prefab because it's blue in our hierarchy list. We can also just see that there are links to the prefab over here. So if I just hit select, we're in assets, custom prefabs, and you can see that it's platform one. We made this ourselves here, and it's got three components: transform and a sprite renderer. Both of those will just be there by default if you pull in a sprite from your project folder. And we added a Polygon Collider 2D. So that the addition of the Polygon Collider 2D means that it's definitely an object that you could not just get from within Unity. You'd have to make this yourself. And once you start doing this, and particularly if you start if you start editing the shape of the collider, which is what we did, you're really adding your own context to these graphics that you created. So one part of this in our sprite renderer here is the sprite itself, right? And that's platform one. So if we click there, it takes us just to an image file, right? And it's actually a sprite is really just a rectangular section of an image, and it's this. So begin 18, that was our file that we used with all our gray boxes in lesson 18. And now it's time to enhance that further with new images. Now, you could just overwrite them, save over it, but for the purposes of the tutorial, I'm going to leave begin 18 intact. And I just have an environment finished folder up here, and this image begin 24. I'll just blow it up a little bit. Is really just the same layout as the multiple sprite file that we have for our gray boxes here, with just improved graphics on top. So if, for example, I wanted to change this, it's a very simple matter of just dragging that image into there. And since I've got more than one of these, I can now apply that change to the prefab, and it updates here. Actually, our cube is probably easier to see. So if I just drag that one in there and apply the change, so it's only changed it on this instance up at the top here. But if I apply that across all my prefabs, you can see now that they've all changed, and I can do the same over here with this shorter one as well, and apply that to my prefab. So that's updated on my graphics. Now I could as well, if I have more graphics to add, which I do here if we go into environment placeholder, and we take a look at begin 20. You know, there are a few other images here that we can use. For example, this one here, some grass, right? So if we want to bring that out and think about where do we want to put it, right? Well, if we put it in the background, it'll definitely appear behind the character, but it will also appear behind all our platforms. I would like this to sit on the platform, but also behind the character. So if we look at our sorting layers, we've got default, background, environment, floor, player, and foreground. So if I add another one, it's very easy to just say platform. It's a platform back, and so I can just move that then. So it's on top. It'll appear on top of my my floor, but well, stick with the same naming convention. Floor back, but behind the player. And I can make another one, floor front, and put that in front of the player. So so if now I click on this grass here, and I just make it background floor, it will always appear behind the player, and I can shrink it a little bit if I want to, and Control D to duplicate it there. And you can actually tint the color of your sprites as well. So if you need to add further variety, like so, you can do it just by tinting the color like this. You can also change the alpha and fade them out. So if you need to get a little more variety in than might seem available to you, you can do that quite easily. So these pieces of grass will always appear. Just pressing Control D there again. They will always appear behind the player, but in front of these trees, and then likewise we've got some further objects that we can use down here. We've got a couple of weeds that we can throw in as well. So if I put that weed in there, it's default, which is the top layer. So let's make that floor front, and now that will sit on our floor, but the player will pass right between that and the grass. So in that way, then, like, you know, that hasn't really affected any of our graphics that were already in the scene, but we have added further details that weren't already there. And you can use things like this, of course, to disguise edges, and I've also got some silhouettes here that we can just throw into the background. So put a silhouette in the background and maybe fade it out a little bit. I can put a branch of a tree in there as well. Actually, maybe I won't fade that out. I can put some grass in there, and of course, like, you know, they don't all have to be reserved for the same for the same layers either. I could tint the grass so that it appears to be almost faded out as well, and have that appear in front of our silhouette. So now that we've created these, what about yeah? Well, let's just run it and see how it goes. But next we could think about updating the character graphics. Now, yeah, and you can see our characters passing through all those objects. So created steps that have no way of getting back up. But now we say we want to update our character graphics, All of those are in separate folders inside of our Spriter folder. Now I could go in and just update them one by one, but really it would just be easier for me to go in and just save over these. So I'm going to go into my Spriter folder, which is here. Actually, let's go back here to character 2D prototype, just outside of our assets folder, back into non-Unity where we work in Photoshop, and I've got this begin 24 folder. And if you want to do this yourself, I have this folder here that says copy the contents only, not this folder itself, which means take these, right, because we don't want to overwrite our Spriter folder. That's got stuff other in it than the images in it. We've got our prefabs and we've got our SCML files. So I just want to overwrite the images, and that's all that we've got here. But it's the same folder structure with the same file names inside otherwise. So let's go back to our assets folder here, into custom and into Spriter. If I just Control V there, paste these in, and ask me, do I want to replace them or skip them or do what? So I'm going to say replace those files and switch back to Unity, and we have an updated character in color. So it's as easy as that. So now we're at the end of the course, and I hope you have enjoyed it. Time to get making some sprites. Thank you very much.